You know, this is something that obviously we believe is a political persecution, and I think people on both sides of the aisle believe that it's a complete abuse of power. He's a tough guy, George, as you know, and he's someone who's going to be ready for this fight. We're ready for this fight, and I look forward to moving this thing along as quickly as possible to exonerate him, despite what it seems to be doing in the polls.
What evidence do you have the Democrats see this as political persecution?
What? Sorry, what's that?
What evidence do you have that Democrats see this as political persecution? You said people on both sides of the aisle see this as political persecution.
Look, there's not only articles have come out from the New York Times, Financial Times, and whatnot, saying this would be a grave miscarriage of justice, a mistake to bring this case. But I've heard Democrats coming out on various talk shows and radio shows and whatnot saying that this is not the case. Not that they're supporting Donald Trump or embracing him, but that's my point all along, George. It shouldn't matter what side of the aisle you sit. If you're an American and you're concerned about rule of law, there should be no scenario where you want this to happen, because we all know, and if you're intellectually honest, we all know that had Donald Trump not been Donald Trump and it was John Smith, this case never would have been brought. If he was not running for re-election, there's no way this case would have been brought. This case is not even legally sufficient. Factually, it's a joke, and it won't survive a challenge of law in a courtroom. You've had the federal prosecutors look at this case and... Go ahead, George.
You can't know that for sure. No one's seen the charges. There are at least 24 charges, according to most reports, perhaps up to 34.
Right.
You haven't seen the charges. I haven't seen the charges. You don't know what's behind that right now.
Yeah. Oh, I do know it, George. I mean, come on.
Yeah, just one question. Would you like some dressing with that word salad? This is Trump's lawyer Joe Tacopina humiliating himself after George Stephanopoulos asked him the incredibly hard-hitting gotcha question of, what are the names of the people that you are talking about? Now, usually lawyers are supposed to be, good at bullshitting, but Joe Tacopina uses the brilliant legal strategy of melting into a stuttering puddle on the floor and failing to answer the question. And his claim is actually a major talking point coming from Republicans right now, that there's some mystical group of Democrats who are siding with Trump and thinks it's somehow wrong for Trump to be held accountable for committing crimes. Only, here's the thing, no one can actually find them. Beyond that, it's pretty hard to make the case that these charges against Trump are unfair when we literally haven't even seen the charges. His lawyers haven't even seen the charges. You know who has seen the charges? A grand jury composed of normal, everyday citizens who reviewed all of the evidence and came to the educated conclusion to indict him. So I think it's pretty obvious which side has more merit here. Joe Tacopina then goes on to say that no one else would ever be indicted for something involving campaign finance violations for hush money payouts to porn stars, and this is only happening because Donald Trump is running for president. Well, that's quite the novel argument, considering someone else by the name of Michael Cohen was already indicted, convicted, and sentenced for his role in this exact same scheme. And not only that, Trump's own Justice Department even referred to Trump as Individual One for his role in orchestrating these illegal payments to Stormy Daniels. Of course, Trump's own Justice Department then proceeded to not prosecute Donald Trump because, let's be honest, why the hell would Bill Barr ever decide to prosecute Bill Barr's boss? The Justice Department's negligence in failing to prosecute Trump is why Alvin Bragg is taking up this case in the first place. But Republicans then go on to argue that the Manhattan DA's office under the previous DA before Bragg, Cy Vance, decided not to pursue charges against Trump, which somehow proves that Bragg is doing this for political reasons. Well, that whole argument definitely fell apart this weekend when Cy Vance told Jen Psaki on her new MSNBC show that he paused the investigation into Trump because Bill Barr's Justice Department told him to.
There's been a lot of reporting about your tenure as the Manhattan District Attorney with regard to this case, and some of it is conflicting and is being used to attack the merits of the case. So I want to clear up any confusion here if we can. One narrative is that you declined to move forward with an indictment in the hush money case and that Alvin Bragg revived the case. There's a conflicting narrative that you greenlit the case before you left office and Bragg pumped the brakes until now. So when you left office in 2021, how close were you to an indictment on the hush money case?
Well, good morning, Jen. Thank you for having me on the show. There are going to be limitations about what I feel I can communicate to you in answer to those questions, because some of the response would include internal deliberations of the office that I feel that are, to be kept confidential. But I think it's safe to say, looking at the front end of the storyline, the Southern District of New York, at the same time as ourselves at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, we're looking at the so-called hush money payment issue. And then we learned from the Southern District of New York that they asked us to stand down. And by stand down, I mean they were communicating that they had this ongoing investigation and they wished that we put our efforts on hold while they completed their investigation.
So there you have it. The only political actors who are interfering with justice here were those in Trump's own administration who intervened to protect Trump when he was president. Now that he's no longer president, he can no longer rely on his henchmen to protect him from the consequences of his own actions. So when MAGA's talking heads tell you that this is a political witch hunt, you can remind them who actually interfered with justice here. And this TV appearance by Joe Tacopina isn't the only time that he's crashed and burned on air recently. Here's his previous appearance from just last week.
No, it is very simple.
It is.
You have a lawyer who paid a woman 10 years after the alleged sex act, right before an election, and he was reimbursed by your client. How is that not a prima facie case that the grand jury has?
It's clearly not, because I'll tell you what, there's two massive distinctions here in campaign finance law, which I've become sort of expert in. I've listed Bradley Smith, the former head of the FEC. One, unlike John Edwards, this was paid with personal funds. So there's a massive distinction there.
Matter.
Oh, it does.
It doesn't matter.
Yes,
what was
there's
the
a statutory
intent of the payment? What was the intent of the payment?
To prevent embarrassment to himself and his family. Even Michael Cohen said that under oath when he pled guilty.
So you're saying that Michael Cohen paid the star, the porno star,
whatever,
so that Donald Trump wouldn't be embarrassed to his family, and it just coincidentally happened a couple of weeks before the election. For 10 years, they weren't worried about it.
She came forward when he was running for presidency. She didn't come forward for 10 years before. Some might call it extortion, but putting that aside, Reverend, listen to me. It has to be, for it to be a campaign finance law violation, it has to be exclusively done for the campaign.
If we were in court, I would ask them to read back your statement. She came forward 2 weeks before the election, which meant you were reacting to the election.
Yeah, I would say that Joe Tacopina is going for the gold in the mental gymnastics category. This is him trying to explain how the hush money payouts that were clearly intended for Trump to hide the truth from voters in 2016 was just a total coincidence and was not linked to the campaign itself, even though the payments occurred just a few weeks before the election. Only here's the first problem with this logic. Once again, just like with his previous argument, the courts have already dealt with this. Michael Cohen was sentenced to prison in 2018 under the pretense that the purpose of Cohen's hush money payments to Stormy Daniels were to influence the 2016 election, and therefore the payments must be treated as campaign contributions, which are subject to strict restrictions under federal election law. And all of this is already case law. Trump now is making the exact arguments that were rejected when Michael Cohen first tried to make them before he pleaded guilty. But this was settled half a decade ago. And of course, Joe Tacopina knows this, and we know he knows this because he admitted that his own current client was guilty on live television back in 2018.
No one here is going, oh my God, I can't believe this. I've said all along, if he had just come out and said, yeah, I did, so what? And just chalk that up to another one of the things on his list of minor scandals, he gets through. Right. She's gone into great detail about her one-night stand with him. What else can she say? There's nothing else to tell. This could be looked at as an in-kind contribution at the time of the election. This is a real problem.
And here's the cherry on top of all of this. The Rolling Stone is now reporting that Trump's own team is fed up with Joe Tacopina constantly embarrassing himself with these debunked legal arguments on air. Quote, a source familiar with the matter and another person close to Trump tell Rolling Stone that a number of Trump's other current lawyers have privately described Tacopina as dumb and a loudmouth. Sources also say that some of Trump's lawyers and advisors have warned the ex-president that he should be careful with Tacopina and that he cannot trust the attorney's loyalty. Quote, he pisses off others with his antics, but he's a blunt object that Donald Trump wants, apparently. A third source called Tacopina such a freaking idiot. And I gotta say, it's almost poetic that while Trump's own lawyers are fed up with Joe Tacopina and acknowledge his obvious shortcomings, that Trump can't even recognize that he's burying himself because he enjoys watching the television spectacle. Just one more example of how Donald Trump is his own worst enemy. Before you go, a quick announcement. I've started a Spanish YouTube channel. Democrats desperately need to be able to appeal to Spanish-speaking audiences, so this is me doing my part. To help that channel get going in the algorithm so that we can finally start spreading our progressive message and breaking the conservative stranglehold on Spanish-speaking media, please subscribe and watch a few videos. The link to that channel, called Brian Tyler Cohen Espanol, is right here on this screen. And of course, to see more of my content in English, make sure to subscribe to this channel as well. The link is also right here on this screen. Thanks so much for watching.